Good evening, good morning, and good afternoon if you are joining from another part of the world. This is Sri Lanka's first LinkedIn Live talk show. Today it's episode 52. My name is Amita Gamage. Thank you very much for joining us on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and on YouTube. And since I have just mentioned my name, let me talk about the show a little bit. And when I look at the number, episode number 52, I've been running this show for almost a year, 52 weeks on a continuous basis, bringing experts and talking to them. If you ask me whether I was a talk show host before COVID era, no, I was not. I wanted to test the waters, and here I am after continuing this for 52 weeks. Amazing. So, another advice for those who are into social media, remember its consistency. So, what is this show all about? This is all about various expert topics. Whenever I have a challenge with my guests, whenever they are busy, for few sessions I used to come all by myself. But other than that, I always bring an expert. So, talking about myself a little bit, I'm a CEO coach. I'm a certified professional executive coach, and I love coaching CEOs. I'm also a personal branding strategist. I help business owners and senior professionals, C level executives enhance their personal brand. There are so many clients that I have locally and overseas. And then, apart from that, I help organizations achieve better B2B results by working with their B2B teams. Soon I will be a part of a software firm where I'll be helping them achieving global software revenue and growth in terms of software related to automation. I'll talk about it soon. So, what are we going to talk about today? Today, we are going to talk about a very special topic, a topic that has been uh, focused more during last 1.5 years to 2 years, more than ever globally. But even in Sri Lanka, we see this topic is looked at in a very serious manner. So, whom are we going to bring? Okay, the topic is startup funding. Now, in general terms, funding refers to the money required to start and run a business. It is a financial investment in a company for product development, manufacturing, expansion, sales, marketing, office spaces, inventory, maybe R&D, and many more. A startup may require funding for different reasons. So we will have answers to many unanswered questions, because how much ever you have answers with the dynamic environment, sometimes some answers may not be relevant over time. So I have an expert here who is going to answer all these unanswered questions. I have a set of questions that I'm thinking of asking him. But if you have any questions with regard to startups and startup funding, because we are going to focus on startup funding, uh, he will be able to answer you. So we have Chalinda Abekon, Chief Executive Officer and Principal, Lankan Angel Networks. Let me invite him to the stage. Good evening, Chalinda.
Good evening, Amita. How are you?
Good, good, good. Thank you very much for accepting the invitation.
Not a
Uh,
problem. I think this has been on the works for, is it almost
quite
a
a
year? I
while.
think
Yeah, yeah, I
we'll
know.
be discussing. So thank you for having me, and for most importantly having the patience uh,
Yeah, I know.
through this thing.
Yeah, so a lot of people have been waiting, and then there were a few who spoke to me when they got to know that you are coming to the show. They gave me some questions also. Amita, why don't you ask this and that? Of course, I
Right.
expect everybody to come and maybe have a chat, ask any questions other than the questions that I'm planning to throw you along the way. So I usually dig a little bit about the guest who is coming here. I especially dig into the past, like the for FBI. Yeah, I want to
Right.
know a little bit about looking at
All the
you. I
skele-
know looking at
all
you.
the
You
skeletons in the closet,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
exactly. And looking at you, you look very young, but I'm sure you would have been younger. So, what have you been doing when you were schooling, right? A bit of your family background, or what were you doing? Mostly, what I am trying to establish is what were you thinking when you were schooling, and what are you doing right now?
Right. So essentially, I'm the youngest of a family of three. So I have two older brothers.
Okay.
They're actually 10 and 14 years old. So essentially, what it means is I'm the family mistake, but the best mistake in my books. Uh, I schooled at Mahanama College, but I wasn't very academic. In fact, I didn't pay any attention. uh, I probably started listening to music at a very, very young age. That was my number one passion.
Oh,
And then
okay.
obviously, we were fortunate enough to, uh, grow up in that whole 90, I would say 4 to 96 era when Sri Lanka was on top of cricket. So just like anybody else, played cricket as well. So the only thing that I did was playing cricket and listening to music, um, and found whatever reason not to stay in class. Uh,
Okay.
and in fact, I only also, I mean, I barely passed through my O levels. I sat for my A levels. Actually, I didn't sit for my A levels. I only sat for two papers. For the other paper, I didn't go.
Just like
But yeah,
me, I haven't
yeah.
done my A levels too.
But yeah,
we
so
studied, we studied, but
different
towards the
things.
end, yeah, different things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. So, okay, moving further, whatever you would have done for higher studies, further studies, I mean, studies is not all about your diplomas and degrees. It's all about
Mm.
books and experiences and people and whatnot. So how did you get into the industry? Uh, I'm sure you would have joined the corporate world. What bridged it? It was someone was pushing. It's time that you work, or did you get into entrepreneurship at once? What happened?
No, no. So I think, like I said, I wasn't. Uh, if you look at majority of the people in my age at that time, we didn't really, or at least I didn't have a vision of saying, look, I want to do this or I want to become this person. I think there was a time when I did contemplate in joining the army, purely because that was a norm back then, and
Mm.
because I didn't know what the hell to do. And I was also a bit of a troublemaker, getting into a lot of trouble. So I thought, might as well put that skill into some use. Uh, but then, I did follow a degree in technology. And
Oh,
I think the real point where I actually had to think about, okay, I need to do a job. Because even when we were following the degree, we still had a, war going on. So it
yeah.
was kind of live for the moment. We still enjoyed ourselves. We played cricket. We did all the things that a late 19-year-old or a early 20-year-old would do. And then when the war finished, then it kind of dawned, or what, now you don't have to leave the country, and now I need to find a job, and now I just graduated as well. So the the year that the war ended was the same year that I graduated as well. So everything
Okay.
happened at the same time, and at the same time we also had the financial crisis.
Yeah.
So you had an IT degree, you had a financial crisis, a lot of people were laid off, so you couldn't find a job even if there was this thing, and at the same time now it was safe. So that was the start, I would say. But then I went I think I went to somewhere around 30 plus interviews across 6 months in 20 plus organizations before I had my first, breakthrough, which was at ICTA. And I
Oh,
used to get into a lot of, like, because it was 6 months, interview after interview, getting rejected. So towards the latter part of it, was quite arrogant. I used to kind of even fight with people, like, if you're not hiring me, why are you asking me to come
even
for this interview?
exactly. Yeah, I
And
can
we used to go
imagine.
in bus. We used to take the bus, right? So you're wearing
Yeah.
all this tie, all of that. But yeah, so that was the start.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, see, one of the things that I try to emphasize in this show, especially to the younger generation, sometimes today's younger generation is much more comfortable. They haven't seen a
Mm,
war, they haven't seen maybe uprising or whatever. So
mm,
they are a lot of they are comfortable, and they want immediate gratification. You go and you immediately want. Sometimes you have to work a little hard to get things. So some of these
mm,
experiences are great because this is not coming from someone in a different country. We are talking
mm,
about our own people, and then we are already in the system, in the business, so
mm.
you can learn things. So I'm happy that I'm uncovering those things, those finer points. But
Finer points.
yeah, somebody could learn. Imagine going to 15 interviews, not knowing whether the 16th is going to be, fine. Will it go your way or not? We don't know, but then we keep on keep on betting.
Betting, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so you want to talk about a little bit about your corporate journey? You started with ICTA, and
Yeah,
then
so when I joined ICT, I think ICT at the time was a very different organization, and unless you were already part of the industry back then, uh,
yep,
I think the newer generation wouldn't know what. So before then, it was a very separate organization. It was fully funded by World Bank, and there was a big project called East Sri Lanka, which was being implemented. Um, and that was a team that we joined on private sector development. And the moment I joined in, one of the things that I had my discussions with my boss at the team, and I said, I wanted to, uh, we were giving out grants for inventors, but I saw that none of these inventors were commercializing their technologies.
mm,
Right, they would invent it, and then that's it. You'll get a
yeah,
certificate, you'll get a medal, that's about it. And then I was like, look, I went through this struggle of not finding a job. And back then we only had about maybe 10, well, 15, 20 tech companies, right?
yeah,
So I said, let's create more companies. So it was an entrepreneurship. It had nothing to do with startups. We will say we'll create a program, and then we created a program called Spiralation, which is the first government-funded, tech startup program, where we gave a grant of $5,000. So that's how we started. So I was at ICTA for almost 4.5 years. I would say 50% of my time was spent on Spiralation, but then I also used to do, country promotions. I used to do quality certifications for organizations, capacity development. So we did a lot of other work. Travel to Africa, to India, promoting Sri Lanka as a destination. So you got the experience of a very, very broad segment while you were
wow,
working with entrepreneurship. I've led a few delegations, the African one, a couple of delegations to India, then Australia. So you learn so much about the larger corporates as well as the respective startup ecosystem. So we were bringing all of these things at that stage. So
yeah.
that was
So
the start.
yeah, that tells me why are you here wherever you are today. I can see the dots getting connected.
Connected, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I didn't know all this. Even for me, that shows how far we are also distant. We know about our current, but then not the.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, amazing. I mean, at that young age, that exposure would have been massive for you. I'm looking at it now. Amazing.
Yeah, I think it was brilliant. You know, started working with a lot of the industry, because the quality certifications, through quality certification, I would have engaged with at least about 80 of the big companies. So you met
Yeah.
all the CEOs, you learned how to have conversations with them, um, and you have to really, because they're not going to treat you as a kid as
Yeah.
long as you don't act like a kid. So
True.
you have to, mature very very fast, and be there.
I can imagine. Like so, even the conversations that you have are completely different. You are
Different, yeah.
also representing a larger organization,
Correct,
and
correct.
one of the unique organization. I'm sure I can imagine the friends and others when you say, I mean, I'm working for ICTA Spiralation. I'm sure you'd have got a lot of respect, and people would have been, okay, ICTA Spiralation, what is that?
Yeah,
Those
yeah.
questions.
I,
Yeah.
I think initial days were extremely fun, right? Because nobody understood what startups was. I actually remember the very one of the first outside event we did in Kandy. Um, we told students from Peradeniya University to pitch an idea,
Okay.
and they used to ask, "What do you mean by pitching an idea?"
Mm,
So we had to create a small drama or skits where I
okay.
would pitch an idea, and my boss at the time, Fayaz, would then ask me questions. We'll try to dig deep, and then only people realize, okay, this is what they mean by
Okay.
pitching an idea, because their mentality was go to university, get that education, graduate, get a job.
Yeah. That time it was like that. Okay. Amazing. I mean, I need to meet you over a coffee and then dig deeper into
Deeper,
your experience.
definitely.
Yeah. So, I mean, I have this question I always wanted to ask you. When did you fall in love with startups? And now I see where the seeding was. But then, when was that aha moment? Like you realize my journey will be over there. I
Right.
think I'm going to stay on this lane. Was there anything like that?
Yeah, yeah. I think like I said, right, because I, just for anybody, any 24-year-old, the opportunity of traveling to multiple countries is great. That's one of the things, especially if you haven't been traveling in your childhood, and
Yep.
all of a sudden you start to travel, you get to see countries. So that was part. But then so where we met, which was Startup Weekend.
Yeah.
So Startup Weekend came to India for the first time back in 2012, and they were doing this hackathon. We didn't even know what the word hackathon was at that time. So there were a couple of people. There's a guy called Chandika Hirash. They're part of a company called Synergics, who does Creately. I was chatting with them. I said, there's this thing, shall we go? And they were like, okay, this seems cool, let's go. 54 hours, you have to build a company. uh, I couldn't go with them. I went the following month to Mumbai,
Hmm.
without really understanding what this Startup Weekend is, what a hackathon is, what are you supposed to do. We just know that you have to build a company in 54 hours. And that's where we were, wow, because everybody was staying up. There's so much of pressure on you. I think that was the first aha moment. The second aha moment was when we came back from that trip. uh, Same year, we went in February. Same year in November, we organized a similar event in University of Peradeniya, and we had
Okay.
over 200 people signing up from all parts of the country.
Okay.
13 different universities. We had booked a train
Oh.
compartment, branded its spiralation from Colombo. We got the train to stop at the Sarasavi Uyana, which is a station within uh,
The
Peradeniya
campus.
University. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we had all these people coming in. The campus gave us all the accommodation. And interestingly, Amita, our culture was that the Jaffna students were with their group, the Moroto students were with their group. They all
Mm.
came in their cliques. So we said, look, until you introduced each other, you speak to each other, and you form new teams, we are not starting this thing. So we got them. That exercise only finished at around 3 o'clock in the morning, and we didn't let them go to sleep. Nothing. Uh, and on the third day, these two girls came. one girl was from Jaffna. She was from the Jaffna University. The other girl was from Sabaragamuwa, and now they are staying in the hostel as well, right? And they've been
Yeah.
working together, same part of the
Together.
same team. And this girl was like, she thanked us, and she said that this is my first Sinhala friend,
Oh, okay.
and this is my first trip outside of Jaffna, and
Okay.
whatever that I was taught in my younger days is completely different, and we are now best friends. So
Amazing.
we got a lot of those stories coming out, and for majority of the people that was their first time out of that city. And I
Mhm.
think at that point I decided, you know what, yes, traveling is exciting, good pay, good exposure, all of that, but this is something that I want to kind of continue.
Okay. Now you
Sorry,
are
that was
giving
a
me
long answer.
no, 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 no. You are giving me more reasons to see. These things should be shared, and you are giving me
Right.
more reasons to have coffee with you. Yeah. So,
Definitely.
so let me ask the first question related to today's topic.
Sure.
You know, I mean, please explain. Maybe for ordinary people, there are a lot of people who are not from startup ecosystem or from entrepreneurship side of this story.
Hmm.
What is a startup?
Right. Good question. Very complex question. Uh, so, see, there is a difference. If you look at any new business from a language standpoint, people call it a startup. If somebody starts a cupcake business, it's a startup now, right? Which used to be called a small business.
Yeah.
But now the word startup is a bit, sexy, so people tend to use it.
Buzzword.
It's a
Yes.
buzzword, right? But when we look at it, when I say we from an investment standpoint, when we look at a startup, we refer to companies that can A, grow extremely fast, and
Mhm.
B, where the founders want to grow extremely fast. And these are two different things, because sometimes you have companies which has the potential to grow fast and go to multiple countries, the Facebooks uh, of the world, but the founder might not want to do that.
Mhm. Mhm.
you know
Okay.
he might just want to, his
Go
own business,
slow.
go
Yeah. Mind
slow,
his
take
own
his time,
business.
yeah, enjoy life, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with
Nothing
that.
wrong. Yeah.
um, but when we say startup, we are referring to those where you're solving big problems, and problems which are just not related to Sri Lanka, but it's in either the region or global, and we want to take this solution to multiple touch points.
Okay.
So that's our definition. So different people,
Have.
depending on where they come, they will have their own flavor of the definition. But from an investment standpoint, when we look at a startup, that's the parameter.
Okay. Great. I mean, that's a lovely answer, which could open eyes of some of the startups. You call it yourself a startup, but then you are also giving them a question. Are you planning to grow fast and then you want to scale it? How
Hmm.
serious are you as a startup founder?
Hmm.
And then if they fall into the other category of, no, I want to live a normal life, and then I don't want this drama. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's fine.
Yeah, it's perfectly fine. Yeah.
Perfectly fine. Yeah. Okay, let's say hi to Sanju, who is joining on LinkedIn. Hi, Sanju. Thank you for joining.
Hello.
Yeah. My next question. Uh, in the last 4, 5, maybe 10 years, and especially during this COVID period of time, there's this increased attention towards startup. Do
Hmm.
you also see the same thing? And if so, why?
Definitely. I think the number one reason for that is the other part of being startup is we generally call startup for technology companies, because uh, I will majority of the time it's the technology companies that can be scaled.
Yeah.
That's what software or hardware, or a combination of that, which is what allows you to scale. um, and the reason why you're seeing an exponential growth in this whole startup, not just in Sri Lanka but all over the world, is because digitization is increasing,
Yeah.
right? um,
Mm.
I mean, you and I would have bumped into each other a couple of times, but in the last 2 years we haven't,
Yeah.
right? But
True.
then we've probably been more in touch
Yeah,
during these 2 years as opposed to previously,
definitely yes.
right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of change in behavior. There's and there's changing behavior. There's disruption that is happening, and you need to change your behavior as well. So because of all these challenges and opportunities that are there in the market, you see an exponential number of companies coming in.
Okay, uh, that's a good one. So the next question is like, what is the biggest issue faced by startups? With I mean, you would have you would have met thousands of startups by now. I would without any hesitation I would use that word, because your early career also is with startups.
With
And
startups, yeah.
yeah, so and then events to number of engagements. So looking at today's point of view, I mean, the challenges they had back then would have been different, and now what the challenges that I'm talking about, the real startups, who really want to become a startup, what are the challenges that they face?
Right. So one of the things about being an entrepreneur in a startup organization is that you are always going to have challenges. Your challenges are going to outweigh, you know, your non-challenging days, and purely because the reason is it's always about having to be resourceful because you don't have all the resources that you need,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So whether it's talent, hiring people, whether it's funding, whether it's acquiring customers, acquiring partners, you're always faced with challenges. And like what you said, I think there is, I would say, a trend in some of these things. I think earlier days, people had a challenge of building solutions, and that's a technical skill. I think that technical skill is now solved. Now we are really good at building products. I mean,
yeah.
we've built the fastest open source ESB. We've built the fastest stock exchange, right? So if we can do that, we can build other products that are there as well. So the product
True.
engineering has improved. We do have challenges in sales. you know I think you're a coach, you've been a salesman yourself,
My
you
God,
will
I love it.
understand it's something you can't teach. It has to come from within, right? So we have on that, we have obviously challenges in funding, and the next evolution of sales, I would say, is market access, because Sri Lanka is very small. So
True.
which means that if you are going to grow very fast, you have to look at outside countries. But then it's not as simple as you just getting on a plane, going to another country and start selling your product. It doesn't work like that, right? How do you build partnerships? And so there's always challenges on that end. But what I see right now is the biggest challenges around growth and market
Mm.
access, which means it's a good thing because now people are thinking regional, they're
Outside Sri
thinking
Lanka, yeah,
global. you
yeah,
know
yeah.
Before, I would say 3-4 years ago, they were thinking, Sri Lanka, how can we be Sri Lanka's number one? 20 million people doesn't mean, right? There are more people who take the train in Mumbai than the entire population of Sri Lanka, and Mumbai is just one city, right? So
Yeah,
scale, they're thinking scale now.
yeah, I know. I mean, I was having a discussion with somebody, and then our discussion was how to have more than 10,000 paying customers, and then our discussion was like, we cannot achieve it by looking only at Sri Lanka. So
Mm,
where can we look at Islam? And that moment alone, I think within the next 30 minutes, I went and got connected to about 25 top IT digital transformation leaders in the region,
mm,
and half of them have already accepted my connection request, because I,
right,
I I knew, okay, this is the next step that I need to do. I can't
correct.
be flying so much, but then LinkedIn could help me. So
Yeah,
that gives a good hint to people, uh, and especially these days, you can't anyway fly the way you want, right?
correct.
So might as well through digital means reach out to the world, and by the time you are ready to fly, maybe you already have someone waiting on the other side to say hi to
Absolutely.
you. Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. So brilliant. Now I want to straight away come to the funding part of it. Like,
Right.
to start a startup, should you really, really need funding? I know, I mean, maybe asking a silly question, because if you really look at, people are talking about unicorns, and then companies or founders have raised so much of millions worth of dollars. It could also send a message to the others, okay, if you can't raise money,
Mm,
you are finished.
mm.
So maybe sometimes when I read news, startup related news, I wonder whether startups are more about fundraising than about their own products or solution. I mean, you
Correct,
you
correct.
sometimes wonder, right?
You're absolutely right. I think, I've come across my share of people who start a startup just to raise money and not to solve
Okay.
a problem, right? Um, and so here's the thing. Again, it goes back to language, right? So if you look at it from an English language standpoint, funding and money would be considered as synonyms, right?
Yeah,
Uh, but again, when it comes to startups, when you say funding, the reason why you raise capital is important, right? You're not raising capital to pay yourself and your employees because you don't like working for someone else. So hence you will start a company and you want to get a salary of 150,000 because that's what you would have got if you work somewhere else. Hence I want to have my 150,000, that into 12. You do the calculation, this is the amount of money that I want to raise, or with your other team and all of that. So people do these calculations, not everyone, but there is I would say a good 30-40% of these people, right? So the funding is not for you. The being a startup is not an alternative for you finding a job, right? And I think now what has happened, just like what you said, because the media is putting all this information, we are also to blame. Every time we also fund a company, we have to put a press release, do all of that, because that's part of our job as well. um, People want to fast track their journey to entrepreneurship, right?
yeah,
And what I tell is, look, entrepreneurship is about solving problems, and as long as you live and the earth keeps on rotating, there will always be problem. So there is
yeah,
no such thing as today is a better time to start a business as opposed to yesterday or for tomorrow,
yeah.
right? You need to be able to first understand that why are you starting up. So to answer your question, is fundraising important? It's yes and no. It becomes important once you validate that there is opportunity. If you ask me the question, do you need to raise money to validate whether the problem exists, the answer is no,
Okay.
right? And
So
if
fundraising, so that also tells me that fundraising should happen at a specific
time.
time,
Correct.
Okay.
I'll take a maybe another 30 second. I'll give you an
No, no,
example,
no,
right?
please, please. This is important. This is
Yeah.
important. Please
So
take time.
10 years ago, if you wanted to launch a e-commerce site, you had to know how to code,
True.
right? But now you don't need to code. You have WordPress, but you also have stuff like Wix, where you just drag and drop, put something together and do. So what it means is, because entrepreneurship is hard, entrepreneurs have built tools to make the journey easy. So that's why I said earlier, it's about you being resourceful.
True. Yeah. So, Chalinda, that also reminds me. I've just made an appointment with the company who has just built my son's e-commerce site. My son
Right,
is 12 years old. He was
right,
building his brand. He
right,
can't code and I can't code. So we
right.
got someone to build the website. He's using his personal brand to promote the goods
Mm.
in the website. He has already signed up with parties who are more than happy to partner with him. Hey, I think you can reach the market faster than us, so why
Yeah,
not we sell it through you? Yeah.
yeah,
So yeah, so as you
absolutely.
said, the those very entrepreneurs have done it for others, because that was a
Others.
problem back then.
Correct, correct. And the golden principle is that you don't need money, you need a better strategy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
uh,
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so we have Dilruk. Hi, Dilruk, joining from Facebook. Uh,
Hello.
Amita and Charlene, good evening. Thank you. We have a lot of people watching and listening very silently. Maybe looks like I am asking all the questions that I mean, some of them anyway send me the questions early. Okay, we also have Tamit joining from Panadura on LinkedIn. Hi Tamit, he's a regular fan, and I'm starting something on Facebook for local entrepreneurs with Tamit. So Tamit
Nice,
anyway has to
nice.
come here. Yeah. So uh, my my next question is, for a startup, what are the sources of funding? Right. I mean, if I'm a startup, what should I do? Where should I look when I come to the point of raising funds?
Got it. Before I answer that question, Amit, I just want to point out to say that, like I said, startup is a very broad
Yeah.
term, and the companies that I focused right now is the ones that can go, scale.
Yeah.
So all these sources that I do share is relevant for that. So
Yeah.
if you look at a pie chart, I will probably represent only about 10% of the entire startup ecosystem, right?
Yeah. I
So
know.
I think there are a couple of grants. I think Spiralation is still running. It's a yearly program. I think this year's cohort is already accepted, and that's, if I'm not mistaken, you have about 1.5 million rupees that you receive as a grant, and plus you get a massive support
Support.
network,
Yeah.
and a lot of free other stuff as well. So that's one particular part of it. And once you have validated, and you should, when you're starting a company, you should always bootstrap and do the business.
Yep.
The reason why you bootstrap is, you need to understand how to manage money before you go and ask somebody else to give their money to you. Because
Okay,
if you have,
I have another question since you mentioned the word bootstrapping. Okay,
right.
for a startup, I mean, this program is being
Hmm.
watched by not only the very senior people but also youngsters.
Hmm.
Uh, in terms of your understanding, experience, what you have seen, I mean, more than the definition, how could a startup bootstrap? What do you mean by bootstrapping? That would be helpful,
Sure.
please.
So bootstrapping is essentially, you do a lot of the work, right? Rather than you paying someone else or hiring someone else, you kind of find ways to do certain things. So let's say you want to build a product. Let's say it's a software product. Maybe you learn, some people would learn and do it. Or if you're not, just like what you mentioned, you're not a techie, then you would go and find a co-founder who has a technical skill,
Yep.
right? Because as an entrepreneur, there's one thing you will be doing on a daily basis, which is convincing, right?
Mm.
You have to convince team, you have to convince your parents, your spouse, investors, partners, and most difficult person is to convince yourself, right?
True.
So if you can't convince a technical guy to be your technical co-founder, you're not going to be able to convince an investor to invest money on it, right?
True.
So
True.
then you start building something, and let's say you want to build a platform. You don't build the entire platform, you just build a piece of it,
Yep.
and you try to take it to market. You yourself have to do those sales.
True.
And we looked at this, right? So if you have a product which is a client facing product, right? And if you are an introvert, so you don't want to go and sell, so now what do? You want to hire.
Yep.
No person that you hire will sell the product as better than you,
True.
because
100%.
you are the one who understands it, right? So you need to come out of your comfort zone. You need, if you're an introvert, you need to find ways, how do I, not that it's bad, but that's something that you need to do,
True.
right?
True.
So bootstrapping, depending on what you're doing, there are ways of doing certain things. There are, like I said, there are a lot of online tools that you
Yeah.
can use. uh,
And even
you
a
know
lot of free tools.
Yeah, exactly. These are all free tools, right? I mean, LinkedIn is a great platform.
Yeah,
You
I
want
know.
customers, put it, start, engaging on a daily basis and see whether people are interested in. You don't even have to build anything.
Yeah,
um, Sometimes actually for you don't need to build a product. You can build what the product would look like on a presentation
true.
and sell the presentation and say, see, and see whether people want to buy it. So these are ways of doing it, right? But it's all about engagement.
Okay, so we have someone who came to the show early and who has done it in a global level. Migara Amitodana,
Right.
the creator of Magic Bit, co-founder. Hi, Migara. Great stuff, Amita and Chalinda. Thank you very much, Migara,
Thanks,
for,
Migara.
yeah, I mean, it's great. Uh, I mean, you coming to the show itself is a strength for us. Thank you very much, you know. And then we have Dilshan, Aryavansa. This is a brilliant, so much insight. Yeah. Okay, Dilshan, thank you very much for joining the show on LinkedIn. So let's talk about. I'm trying my level best to get best out of Charlinder during this little period of little window. We also have okay, Kumudumali, great session. Amita and Charlinder. Hi, Kumudumali. Thank you very much for joining us. She's joining from Facebook, right? Uh, so you're talking about the sources of
Right. Yes.
funding. Yeah,
Right.
you
So
wanna
once
add
you
more? Yeah,
yeah so once so the spiralation is one, and then if you also have, again, depending on where you come from, maybe you might be able to get a little bit of money either from your parents or relatives, to give you that funding as well. And then that's what we call friends and family,
yeah,
right? Uh, they believe in you, they want to help you out, you're doing, you're taking a risk. So take a chance on them, but
yeah,
not everyone has that privilege or that access.
true,
Now in my days when we used to start, and if I said, look, I'm going to start my company, what it meant was that he was not smart enough to get a job, so now he's starting a business.
true.
But now that culture has changed,
Yeah,
right? Now
yeah,
people accept entrepreneur at the same level as a doctor, lawyer, or engineer, right? So that's
true.
great. We've
Yeah,
evolved in that sense. um,
yeah,
After that, if you have certain level of traction, then the Lankan Angel Network, the angel fund, is a is looking at companies. And we do competitions as well, but we look at companies on a daily basis, right?
okay,
Because we are looking for deals. So it's not about who wins. We don't care whether you have won a competition or not. And in our experience, actually, the best companies don't win competitions because they don't have the time to take part in competitions, right? They're building stuff and they're selling stuff. So we go
true.
looking for companies majority of the time. And once you grow a little further, then you have guys like DOV Capital,
Yeah,
and you have other venture arms like Hyperion Ventures, and a few others who are also do investments as well. Some corporates do. So depending on where you are in your stage, as you go up, the entities that look at investing will also change, right? So
okay,
that's the funding life cycle. So when you start small and you keep on growing, different. So mainly focus on early stage. And the
oh,
type of funding that we do is called pre-seed or seed, which means that we would invest anywhere between 10 million rupees to about 45 50 million rupees. That's the range that we are looking at, and typically looking at companies that have some sort of traction.
yeah. So you have already validated the problem. You have built a product, and then you are in the early stage. You are selling. You have paying customers.
I wouldn't say validated. I would say that there is an indication that there are people who are willing to pay for this.
Okay,
So
okay,
the best way to look at is that every problem that you face deserves to be solved, but not every problem that you solve will get paid, right?
okay.
Right.
It's like okay, you have an idea, but then
Yeah.
your idea may not have a opportunity in the
value.
market.
Yeah,
Yeah,
people might not
yeah,
pay it, right? So
yeah.
you, and if you want to build a business, you need that transaction take. Otherwise, you can't hire people, you can't pay salaries, you can't grow the product, you can't add value, you can't do anything.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. I don't know. Maybe I might come and pitch you.
Definitely.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, additional question. I mean, how do we reach out to you? We come to LinkedIn and look at you, and I mean, you want to mention your website or something like that. I mean,
Yeah,
talking
so
about
it's
your,
Lankan Angel. Yeah, so it's lankanangel network.com.
okay,
That's a website. And once you go to the website, you'll see a red tab onto the top right hand corner which says Angel Fund. That's where you need to go.
okay, brilliant. These are additional questions that suddenly, you are talking about so much close things. I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who may not have this information, who may not know what to do with their product that is ideal for a market, but they may not know uh, that you guys are there to fund them. If
Mm.
everything meets, yeah. So now I would also like to ask this in a direct question, like how do investors evaluate a startup for funding?
Right.
What criteria other than what you just mentioned? What else
Sure.
do they look at?
So depending on, like I said, where you are raising money, what investors look at is also very different. At our stage, I would say 60 to 70% of our focus is on the team, right? We don't even look at the idea, that in depth, because end of the day we are investing in people. And see, to build a company, it's going to take 5 to 7, if not longer, years, right? And you're going to spend anywhere between 10 to 15 hours a day, 7 days a week, for the next 5 years, right? So that's more than 60% of your total time available. And it's extremely tough.
Yep.
I know the whole media glamorize it, but when you're sitting on the other side and you're doing this, you have multiple fires to put out. On top of it, you are distanced from your friends, your family. Your friends will be going out and hanging out, but you can't join because you're building a company. You
Yeah.
don't have that luxury. So there's a considerable amount of mental strength and pressure. And I would say, now mental health is this thing which people don't actually talk about,
True.
right?
The
So
agony.
yeah, and you fail on a daily basis. So that's why
True.
I said the biggest challenge for an entrepreneur, or what they spend most of their time, is convincing. And the biggest amount of time is spent on convincing yourself, because on a
True.
daily basis something goes wrong,
True.
and you have to convince yourself that it's going to be okay. You can sort this out. You can get things back to normal and keep going on.
Okay.
um,
So we have someone who glorify this. Enosh, Praveen, great to see you both. Asia is pouring money into startup funding. Yeah, I mean, we talk about that overnight success, but then,
it takes
of
10
course,
years
10 years. Yeah. And then sometimes, people like Enosh talk about those 10 years also. Yeah, Enosh, thank you very much for joining. He was also in my show a few days back. Great to see some of my past guests are suddenly appearing and commenting here. Yeah, we are trying to help the audience, or even the little comments and shares are actually valuable, are helping. Uh, okay, we have Sanjeev. Sanjeev says, miss the start, but it is always something there to learn from you. Thank you, Amita and Chalinde. Sanjeev, you can always go to search Amita Gamage on YouTube. You will find 51 episodes uh, over there. I use the YouTube as the depository. All the shows are there because I myself difficult to find it sometimes when I want to search LinkedIn or Facebook, because I post daily. Yeah. Okay. So Enosh has another comment to make. Funding also comes with a lot of pressure for startups to prematurely scale. What is the best balance between founder and investor? Charlinder, uh, he's
Sure.
throwing something at you.
I think that's a good question. I think, see, before, it also, just like the investor is doing due diligence or is evaluating the entrepreneur also needs to evaluate the investors. And a lot of people don't do that because a lot of the entrepreneurs are not really chasing investors, they're chasing money. So
Mhm.
they say yes to anybody who will cut a check, and this is where the relationship kind of you know
Spoils
gets
maybe.
spoils, because it's essentially like a marriage, right? um, and what we always encourage is, even though it's extremely tough uh, to say no, if there is no chemistry between that investor, don't get into bed with that investor. It's simple as that.
Mm.
Second part of it is, the reason why you get into this I would say fixers, is because you have raised prematurely. It's not
Yeah.
because you're trying to premature scaling. He mentioned mentioned the word premature scaling.
Scale. Yeah.
The reason why you're trying to premature scale is you've raised money prematurely. That's why you have the pressure, right? And then you have that, which is going back, you haven't done your due diligence. How do you plan it out and do that? So when we work with companies, that's why we take a longer time. We might take a longer time to write a check. Today I was working with a company which is a hardware plus software, and they're raising money because they want to deploy 10 machines.
Yeah.
That's their goal, that's their KPI that they have set for. And my question to them is, what does deploying 10 machine gives you, as opposed to you deploying 5 machines?
Yeah.
Now they haven't really thought about it in that sense,
True.
right? If deploying 10 machines is not going to give you a above 10x return, or whatever that you want to create value, your value is not 10x, why are you deploying 10 in the first place? You can
Yeah.
just do it with 5, which means your funding requirements is a lot less, and
Yeah.
you break it down. uh,
True.
so sometimes, see, your first round of funding is going to be the most difficult, and if you are successful on it, then your subsequent rounds will still be difficult, but it will get easier, and you will also get used to it. The problem is, a lot of these entrepreneurs have not worked, haven't seen how business happen, doesn't know how to create cultures, teams, products. They are doing all these things for the first time. So you're a
Yeah.
first time entrepreneur, first time raising money, first time building a product on your own, first time hiring a team, doing everything for the first time.
Sorry.
So
A
the
lot of
so
trial and
the
errors at the same time.
exactly, right? And then you manage to convince the investor puts in money, and all you're doing is busting that money, and the investor is like, what's going on?
True. True. Okay. Brilliant, Chalinder. I mean, I think you are opening eyes of a lot of people. So we have Lashan. Great to see you both together. Very much insightful. Lashan, someone who has raised funds, who has built products, and who has gone to the world market, international markets. Thank you very much for joining. Okay, we have another question for you. Suvin Nellavala. Hi there. Session is really insightful. I have a small question. If a person who is still in college have a great product, will the still being in the college part hurt when it comes to someone investing in that?
Depends on whether you want to stay in college or not. If you are happy to drop out and build it, we don't have a problem.
I have seen this same situation in Shark Tank, where
Right.
one of the sharks says, "Hey, look, are you willing to drop out from the college? I'm willing to invest." And
No,
this,
it's like this, right? That's why I said earlier also, it's about prioritization. If being in college or being in university, getting a university degree is important for it, go and do it,
true,
because you will always have ideas. No one will
yeah,
have just one idea in their life. People
true,
have multiple ideas, right? So go get exposure. The more exposure you get, the more ideas you will get. The more people you will meet, the more ideas that you get. The more cultures you go into, the more ideas you will get. So for us, it's about commitment. And we, majority of us, won't look whether you have a college degree, university degree, who is your parents, mother, father, surname.
Nothing.
Doesn't really matter, right? Can you
And
get things done?
resonate with what you earlier said. You invest in people, not in
Yeah,
ideas. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So this person who wants an investment is still schooling and or college, not willing to give up that. And you said, a proper entrepreneur, a startup founder will be spending a lot of time in developing it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Developing in the sense not only the development of the product, but to develop the
other
business,
things.
you have to
Yeah.
equally work, building the culture, etc., etc. True. So, uh, so there are two things. You pitch when you want funds.
Mm.
What else can somebody do to attract funding instead of going and pitching?
If you, the best way to build a business, and the only way to build a business is through revenue, right? So a
Okay.
lot, and to learn how to generate revenue is very complicated, right? The easiest way to build a business is raising money. You
Yeah.
get somebody else's, I'll tell Amita, give me 10 million. I can bust the 10 million in 1 hour, 10 hours, 1 year, 2 years, anywhere that I want, right? But figuring out how do I convert this 10 million into 20 million rupees and get money going through is the difficult part, right? If you
True.
build a business where you are actually attracting customers and you have, very good cash flows, investors will actually come to you. Because as an investor, I want to make money, right?
I know.
I will put my money into a business where they're already generating revenue, which they have already demonstrated that they can execute. They have a great product, good customers, loyal customers, repeated customers, and they're growing.
Yeah.
That's a
So
risk.
my question is, I know, but is there anything specific that a founder should do to get the attention of an investor, where investor would feel like, hey, I should go there and talk to them and see whether I should invest, than coming and pitching?
Sure. I think you can leverage, LinkedIn to a great extent. I mean, just like you, I build my network on LinkedIn. I do this not just in Sri Lanka, I do it in Southeast Asia, part of different funds. And you have to engage and you have to be consistent in
Show
that.
yourself, like.
Yeah. And not just showing yourself, you need to show that, you're creating value,
Mm, okay.
right? And you're not sharing, a recycle message, kind of, plagiarize from every other hustle out there, repackaging and putting and getting likes. Not that. We will understand that,
Yeah.
right? Because we also come from the same school, right? So when we see somebody, we know, okay, great, thank you very much, good job, we'll see you. So that engagement is necessary. You asked a very good question, though. A lot of the people go and pitch to investors. When the investors say no, they don't even talk to that person, don't look at that person, we'll forget about that person.
Mm,
That's actually a reason for investors to say, you know what, I made the right choice. Because if you only go to the investor when you need money, that's a bad this thing. It's like, you going and marrying something just because there is a dowry.
true
Same this
enough.
thing, right? If the dowry is not there, then you don't want to get married, right? So every investor that you meet, you need to keep them on a, mailing list, keep them updated regularly. So all our portfolio companies, we tell them, even us, every 25th of the month there's a newsletter that goes to our investors of what's happening, and that happens like clockwork. And the more frequent, then even the investor that says no, you start seeing this and like, what, this guy is really working hard, maybe I should have another chat with him.
Yeah. True enough.
And then they would come back to you.
Okay.
So it's not a zero sum.
Yeah, that's a very wise tip that you gave. These are the hidden gems I want to
Right.
uncover. So we have another question, I guess. Lengthy question. Hi, Amita Chal. In the great session, speaking experience wise needed by an entrepreneur, is it essential to join and work with a firm or a startup which is related our interest area before starting the startup? We have in our mind. What are the risks of starting a startup just after graduating? Maybe you don't have experience or you have no related experience. This is Chandima.
See, I always encourage people to do a job, and that's personal, right? Obviously there'll be that outlier who can do all of that, and that's perfectly fine. The reason why I always encourage to do a job and go and work, either it doesn't matter whether a corporate or a startup, because by doing that you learn so much more. You learn how to be part of teams with different people from different backgrounds to who have studied different disciplines, because when you're in university, you're the don in your engineering group, or you're the don in your marketing group, right? All
Tell
of a
me
sudden
about
you go
it.
to a company, there are so many dons coming from different areas, right? And you need to be able to work on that. So your soft skills, how do you engage, how do you build network, that is there. I also don't agree that you need to be in a specific domain that you care. So the very first job that I did was actually it was an NGO which was related to women mental health, HIV, all these I would say diseases where they were treating. It had nothing to do with what I was studying, but I was part of it, and it gave a lot of experience into a completely different industry,
True.
right? And
Yeah.
I always and throughout school days, I've been part of clubs, done a lot of social activities, and those experiences are important.
I hope Chandima got the answer. Uh, uh, then my next question. Let me see whether there is another comment. No. Uh, in terms of advantages and disadvantages of raising funds, I mean, raising funds seems to be uh, not easy when I listen to you, because this is how the investors would evaluate. Now, the advantage of getting that funding is you can scale fast, all that. What are the disadvantages, or the what can I say? The opposite side of raising funds.
I think I wouldn't say the disadvantage is, like I said, if you haven't learned how to manage money and you successfully raised. I think this is connected to what Inosh also
Shed,
asked.
yeah,
um, and you haven't really figured that out, then there's a huge risk, because you will not manage that money properly, and then you're going to be in a lot of trouble, with your investors, might be even with the government, because we've been in situation where we know where EPF ETF is not being paid,
yeah.
right? And that becomes that's offense. So there's debt in the company, so all of those things are there. The other the disadvantage is, I would, again, that's why I wouldn't say is a disadvantage. If you are someone who wants, you have a one track mind, it's either my your way or the highway kind of a mentality, then you might not enjoy having a board, them sharing their views, because the biggest advantage of fundraising is actually not the money. It's a
It's the
support
network
that you're
support.
yeah, it's a network and the support that you're going to get from those investors,
True,
right?
true.
With my group of investors, sometimes I take calls even at 1 o'clock or 12 midnight or early morning, 4 o'clock, because they're in different parts of the world. But speaking to them for half an hour or 1 hour, you know clears out a lot of things, right?
So, I mean, talking about your area of work, your partners with your organization, uh, when they invest in a startup, uh, what kind of interaction that the founders would get other than you? Would they have some kind of more deeper interaction?
Yes. Yes. So, I mean, what we've done right now is we've kind of formalized and put a governance structure which is easier for us to replicate. So, everybody meets every month on a set date. We agreed what that date and time is, and every month, everybody. It's not just a board meeting; it's a shareholders meeting. Everybody comes, right? And they say, okay, what's your progress, where are you having challenges. They will say, okay, we have a problem in finding people. Then they say, okay, let me try and see whether we can find, we just have that conversation going. Then we will also obviously go through the numbers, finances, and make sure that everything is under control, your budgets are in place, all that is there. um,
Okay.
and then everybody's on a, now that's why I say now everybody has WhatsApp, right? So everybody's on a channel. Somebody has a problem, oh, you know what, I have this issue, does
So
anybody
there's
know?
accessibility.
Accessibility, and they're like, oh, you know what, I met this guy, I'm going to introduce you via email, go meet them, they might be a potential customer. So that interaction has to happen. Another advice I would always say for entrepreneurs is that uh, there are certain entrepreneurs who remember the investors when they only need money. That's a very bad thing, right?
Yeah,
So you get your money, then until you get the money, they will beg and beg and beg and follow up, do all of that. Moment they get it, they disappear, and then come again 12 months or 18 months later when they need more money. I think you shouldn't have it like that, right? You should always uh, incorporate them in your journey, because their experience is far more valuable than the money that they're putting into the business.
definitely, yes. Yeah, it's a relationship.
It's
So,
a relation.
yeah, so we have actually come to the end of the program, but then I have one more question for you to ask.
Sure.
Uh, in the meantime, there's a book that I give away, courtesy of Pick a Book, every week. Before I ask you the question, so I invite everyone to just go and check www.pickabook.club, where they uh, help you to read books, and they always get me an opportunity. So there's no competition. So I encourage people to come and meet us. So this week, Chandima Veeratunga takes the book, and then what you need to do
Nice.
is you drop in your details, your email address, your mobile number, and your home address. That will be delivered. So, Jalinda, my last question to you is, overall, it's going to be a massive year for startups. I think for investors, the founders, 21, 22, even next year is going to be big, right? Any specific advice you want to give, something that they should be remembered when they remember, okay, I want to raise funds. I want you to I want them to remember you. Okay, Charlinda gave this. Can we do this before we go ahead and ask for funds?
uh, I think try to, the best advice that I can give you is try to build the business through revenue as much as you can. It doesn't matter how little it is. Even if you're
Okay.
charging 5 rupees, but that customer is giving you 5 rupees every month, that's far better than you giving a product free and not getting anything.
True.
Because as the entrepreneur, it's about, how are you going to get your money out of my pocket, right? And
True.
that's very, very tough. And the other thing is, make sure that you really understand that this is a long term game. This is not short term by any means. This is 5, 7+ years in the making. So before you even start a company, before you go and raise investors, think about your commitments, your family commitments, to all of that, and see whether you can put in that, because that is far more important. I sit on several startup boards. Founders go through a lot of challenges, and sometimes they have to exit the company because to take care of their family and various other things, and that's a very, very hard place to be.
Yeah. True.
So think about that. Don't just chase the hype. So make sure that your mental, you take care of your mental well-being and all of that first. Do that check, and then start the journey.
Yeah. So we have a comment from Pradeep Pushpakumar, very valuable information. Thanks, Amit and Charlinda, for sharing such information, especially the experience. Well done.
Not a problem. Thanks, Pradeep.
Yeah, yeah. So people value these kind of things, and sometimes in a very formal setup, these are the things that may not come out from you, like your
Yeah,
personal experience, little valuable gems. So, Charlinda, thank you very much for
not a
accepting the
problem.
invitation. And we had a lot of questions. We have actually gone 1 hour and 10 minutes because there were so many questions to answer, and you gave as much as possible whatever you could share within this short span of time. Thank you very much, and we let's look forward to maybe have more engagements in the future, because
Future, definitely.
mere 1 hour may not be able to help us to get the maximum out of a person like you who has so much of experience. So
Yeah,
thank you very much.
definitely. Thank you so much, Amita, for having me. And once again, thank you for your patience for almost 12 months that we've been planning this. But yeah, I mean, it's very, what you're doing is very, very important. Bringing that people, sharing that. I think that's what's needed
At
more.
the moment,
And
yeah,
it's,
I know.
I think it's more valuable than you sitting in a lecture
Yeah.
and taking down notes and doing all that. So thank you so much, and all the best to you as well.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right.
Then see you soon. Stay safe.
Cheers.
See you
Take
next
care.
week.
Bye bye.
Take care. Bye bye.